Welcome. You are listening to Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio. A very warm welcome to this issue of Haunted Histories. We've only got 2 left now before the end of probably one of the hardest years that anyone under the age of about 60 has probably had to deal with, of 2020. So, you know, it's December. I know some of you have had your Christmas stuff up since October. No judgment here, but mine isn't up yet. I refuse to put it up until, well, in a week or so, probably. But, whatever works for you, I think, this year. I think it's whatever goes, you've got to do. But so this is the penultimate show of 2020, and I had some amazing news the other Sunday in that Haunted Histories got voted best runner-up in the Higgy Pop Paranormal Podcast Award. I got a silver medal, people, and silver is my colour. Came in second to the absolutely wonderful and mighty Mr. Chris Fleming. So no shame there. And I want to congratulate all the nominees and all the other winners and of all the other categories. It was an amazing award, brilliantly done by Mr. Steve Higgins, as always. But I won an award. Oh. So I've never won anything before. I'm going to be crowing about this for the next 10 years. Unless I win some more. Who knows? Ha ha. Stranger things have happened. Anyway, so as I was saying, penultimate show of 2020, and my guest tonight is someone who most people will actually know this person's work, because this person set up something called the Ghost Book back in 2013, and it's a brilliant website that you can, and Facebook page and everything else, that you can access everything ghosty on, whether it be events, whether it be books about haunted places, sort of brief details about them. It is an amazing site, and when I was checking when it was started, I was quite amazed to see it's been going for that long. But I would hazard a guess that a lot of people who know the Ghost Book do not know the amazing and beautiful and talented lady behind it. Now, the place she lives in has a rugby team, which always ends up getting into a fight with my rugby team. We nickname them the Sinners rather than their actual name, the Saints. But we're not going to hold that against her because I like her and she's my friend. It is the wonderful Madame Lorien Jones.
Hello.
How did you like that intro?
That was lovely. I'm sitting here smiling from ear to ear with that. Was beautiful.
Glad you approved. I mean, I have to say, your local rugby team is my rugby team's one of their arch enemies. But
sorry about that.
Yeah, but I'm not going to hold that against you.
Good.
They are known as the Sinners rather than the Saints.
I'm not a rugby girl, so I can't really comment on.
You must have heard of Northampton Saints.
Oh yeah, I know the name, but I can only apologise for their behaviour.
I think I'm a Saracen supporter, and I think we do deserve it sometimes. But it does tend to the fact that they call them the Saints, the Sinners. But then again, they call the team Wasps, the Pests, and all of that. They've got nicknames for all the teams. People just call Saracens the Cheaters now after they got fined. It's a long story. But you are the human behind the Ghost Book, are you not?
I am indeed, yeah.
So what on earth possessed you to take on such a gargantuan effort as the Ghost Book?
Well, I mean, it didn't start out as such. I mean, you mentioned it goes back to 2013. It's been a slow burner. But basically, I'd moved up north. Mm-hmm. My partner was from there. I moved up there, and and I was working in retail, and I was pregnant with my daughter Holly, and I was working Christmas Eve, and I was working Boxing Day. I was due to be working Boxing Day, and I just thought, I need to do something more for myself. I have a degree.
So you were working in retail, and you decided there's got to be more to life than this.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I didn't want my kids to grow up and me to be out all the time, out on Christmas Eve. So I thought, right, what can I do that will, just, I don't know. I don't think it was even financial at the beginning. It was just something to throw my time into other than somebody else's, shop. So I'd been on my first investigation, like public, ghost hunt, we'll call it, in 2006. And before that, I didn't even really know that they existed. And I'd been on a couple over the years from there on in, and I thought, maybe I could write about these haunted places. Because I'm like you, I love the history as well. I think, it's all important. But what used to annoy me, this was kind of the thing that got me wanting to write about it particularly, was I hate reading about places that are haunted, that are either now private residence, or they've been knocked down, or they're now offices. I think their stories are still important, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to go to places where I could get in and I could go and have a look, and I could, have a little mooch around. And so I thought, right, I'm going to start writing about places where people can actually go themselves, and I can tell them a bit of the history and what the ghost stories are, and then they can go themselves and explore it. And that's kind of how the ghost book was born. And then over time, I thought, how can I make this work for me financially? And then the idea just popped into my head to advertise people's events. So I started off back then. I used to just charge a monthly, it was pittance, but a monthly kind of a subscription fee for the companies to advertise their events for them. And I did all the work. I researched the places. They didn't have to do anything. And then I listed them all. And then each event, I would link directly to the corresponding booking page on their website, so people could just go book. I didn't have anything to do with all that. But then it was really damaging my SEO, because people were coming into the site looking for a ghost hunt, leaving my site, and the bounce rate was going up. And I thought, how can I change this? So that's when, kind of 2018, I decided to start actually selling the tickets instead. So I was keeping people on the site, and it's giving the people who are visiting a better experience, a better user experience. They can find an event and they can book it right there and then.
Yeah.
And once I kind of set that up, I then had time to play with, I probably started doing it a bit before actually, but doing things like having other things, like you say, I've got a library on there, which it's an Amazon affiliate link. So I don't think I've even had a payout from it. I earn that little from it. But if people buy a book through my site, I get a little bit of Amazon's,
right,
earnings. And then I've got books on there like haunted places around the UK.
You got mine on there.
Yeah, I've got yours on there. It's in there. Then I've got books about ghost hunting. And like celebrity ghost hunters, their books are on there. And I have books about haunted America. I've got books about haunted Australia. And then, other places in the world, there's less books to be found, well, particularly on Amazon. So I do kind of cover the rest of the world, but there's less. And there's DVDs on there. There's books about mediumship. So all the kind of, it's ghostly related. It doesn't really go into, aliens or anything like that. The ghost book it's about ghosts.
Yeah.
And then I look at ghost photos, the typical ones that we've all seen, the famous ones, and I try to debunk them or, research them as much as I can to see whether they're real, whether they're genuine. So that's on there. And then I've got a paranormal topics. So my favourite, maybe not necessarily my favourite, but those I think deserve a bit of recognition.
Yeah.
Podcasters, YouTubers, authors, that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for somebody else you want to maybe watch, or
am I on there as a podcaster?
Yeah, you're on there.
Am I? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're on there, yeah.
Well, award-winning, I should be really, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of it. I've got tons more to put on. I've got a stack of papers next to me, but it's just...
Well, you're now branching out a bit, aren't you? And you all your posts on Instagram, you're in a different pub every time.
Yeah, so that was an idea that was born probably the worst year possible to pick that idea. But yeah, I love pubs. I just love, and the older they are and the darker they are and the more wooden timbers they've got, and I'm in my element. So I thought, well, I'll write about haunted pubs and history and the ghosts and stuff. And I think it's especially important, well, it was important before this year, it's even more so now, to support our pubs and celebrate them because they're struggling, and it's such a part of British history, I think, is the pub. Like you were saying last night when we were talking to Joan about how the British having a cup of tea makes it all better. Going to the pub is kind of on the same vein, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my idea. I'm going to be building a new website, a second website, Alehouse Haunts. So it'll be like an interactive guide. So say you wanted to go to, I don't know, Cornwall, and you wanted to find a spooky old pub down that way, you can just have a look on the map and find it and have a little read about it and think, oh, I'll go there for dinner. They do dinner. Like, I'll cover all, whether they serve food, whether they're child friendly, whether they're dog friendly. So yeah, that was this year's project, but I've not got very far with it, as you can imagine, because
I tell you what I'd like to see on that site, Lorien, when you get to obviously in London, well, actually all the big cities, gin houses were very common in the 1800s. I mean,
Tavern and that.
Yeah, gin was the mother's ruin and all that kind of thing. I would be interested on a gin house history walk. So you could see where they were.
Are you up for doing the walk? You gonna do it for me?
Well, I meant putting it on your website and then do it themselves. But I mean, if I could the train to London and help me. But something like that, because I think that's sort of something that links in from a history point of view. It links into what you're talking about. And, you're going to have a lot of those sites were in sort of Whitechapel and places like that have obviously got other historical connections. But it sort of shows as well how the pub trade has changed over the years. I just think that would be an interesting thing to have on.
Yeah, I do quite like the idea as well. You often see them, don't you, of America, like they plan out a route, don't they, across like wherever. But yeah, I could do that because I quite like. I'm into all my pirates, big time piracy and all the history, and around the Execution Docks, I quite liked the two pubs.
I don't know.
Is it the town of...
You there?
Oh, God, my mind's just gone blank. And
That's all right, you'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah, but there's two pubs there. And when pirates were caught, they were obviously taken to a prison somewhere nearby. And on the day of their execution, they were brought to Execution Docks. And then they were allowed to have a drink in one of these two pubs. And then they were taken out onto the banks of the Thames and then they were hung. So
yeah, they did. That's all right. They did this. Historians that say it wrong. They did this. The witches at Pendle. When they took them from Lancaster Castle to be hanged in the Green. There was a pub that they were stopped at to have their last pint. I know they did it in York as well. It was quite a common thing. If someone was due to be hanged in sort of 1700s, they would get a last pint on the way.
Such a funny thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think to just get on with it. Maybe not. I don't know if I want a drink.
But then again, beer was a different thing. I mean, up until sort of the early 1900s, it was safer to drink beer than to drink water.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what people always find hilarious when you look at sort of the workhouse records pre-Victorian era. They didn't do it so much then, but pre-then, you'd have beer instead of water, albeit very weak beer with your meal. And it's like, why didn't they just drink water? Well, the water was more dangerous. At least the beer, they were less likely to get cholera and kind of thing, typhoid and all of that from the beer because it had already gone through the fermentation process, brewing process, whatever the term would be. So, beer has been a sort of same as having a glass of water now, if not maybe having a can of Coke or whatever. That's even less reason to stop and have a drink before you're about to get home. I'd want a stiff whiskey, not a glass of water. I don't think they'd splash out for us. But,
no.
But, yeah, I'll give up. You'd want a snowball.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. How long have I got?
We've had this conversation. But yeah, there's so much you can do with it. I mean, you see, so you look at someone like Amanda Wimmer-Limpert, who does Spook Eats, and she does a lot of that with like restaurants and everything else. And it's there's so many to cover, and to specialise on the pub side, and as you say, promote them and help them. And I do think with some pubs though, they need to broaden their horizons a bit, because there's a few that I think would make a killing from allowing investigations.
Oh yeah.
But they just don't want to do it. They're just not. There's one in Norfolk I'm thinking of that's related to RAF Tibenham, and I've asked them more than once, and I said I don't even mind coming in at midnight when the last punters left, because it's a tiny little village pub, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to do that, and I'm thinking, you would make quite a lot of money, you cover your overheads.
You often see as well, people are kind of a bit scared of the audience that they'll attract if they kind of step into this dark world. But it's like when I approach people when I'm writing and say, can I come and write about this place? And I say, the only people that are going to see what I'm writing are the people who will come there for that reason anyway. It's not going to be seen by people who aren't interested in the paranormal. So you're not going to gain a reputation as such.
No.
Maybe some extra punters.
Well, that's the way I look at it. And those punters are going to be sober who are coming in as well, which is going to be less... I'd rather be dealing with a sober ghost hunter than a drunk idiot.
Yeah.
But hey-ho. But the place we're actually talking about tonight is one that you just did your first article, I believe, for the Wonderful Haunted magazine. Well done. A little round of applause for you there.
Thank you so much.
I presume you're going to be doing more.
Yes. Paul asked me if I'd like to be a writer. So, I've got some big places lined up. Cool. I've got the go-ahead, but the only trouble is there's a flipping virus going around that's putting a halt to everything. So trying to negotiate means and ways, but some good ones coming up.
Yeah, that's why most of the stuff I write doesn't involve me having to go anywhere. I can sit on the computer and do all my research instead.
Yeah.
But well done for your first article. Now, when I was thinking of doing this show, I thought, well, the article was interesting, but there is a lot you left out, in my opinion. I could tell that writing. It was more of a pre-appetizer, if you like, the main course. And so I Googled the place we're going to be talking about. And weird in an amazing way is an understatement. The owner has got... Well, he puts on his website that there's a $5 surcharge for someone who reads the Daily Mail to stay there. So I thought that made me laugh, and I think there was another extra cost for certain people on there as well, and then a discount for other people. And there were things that he was putting in that a bit like the way I do my sort of sarcasm. That if you read it and then you go, he did just say that, and this is making me laugh. And then also the fact that it stresses how dog friendly the place is. And you told me about the very scary bull mastiff who's actually a big teddy bear.
Oh yeah.
So it's ticking all my boxes. Ticking all my boxes. And this place, amazingly enough, is called Hill House.
Yes.
And you were telling me last night that about the link, something that was funny about the link to obviously the Netflix.
Yeah, he said he's had some guests cancel because they've just watched the Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House, and it freaked them out. So they've cancelled. I said, do they not know it's two entirely different places? One of them is fabricated. But yeah, they've cancelled their booking because of it, which made me laugh.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's the opposite. They book it thinking it's the Hill House from the television series, and but it's near to a place. It's near to Howell Hill, and I know on his website, if you want to look it up, it's called Howling. The website is Howling Hill House. It's in Wye Valley, so it's next to. I think its nearest town is Ross on Wye.
Yeah, that's right.
It's also very near to Goodrick Castle, which we're not going to be talking about tonight, but that's got stories all of its own. You never know, I might write a little blog to link in with this at some point on Goodrick Castle. But the place itself was started being built in late 17th century. And describe it to us. Describe Hill House to us.
God, that was a challenge. Hill House is a place. I first went to it when some friends, they'd been visiting for a couple of years and they were doing an event there and they said, oh, you should come. So I went. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known anything about it. But it's a place where it's so hard to describe. It's quirky. Just the artwork that Duncan has in the house. It's a place like no other. You can hear me stumbling to try and find the words for it. You do leave Ross on Wye if you come from the direction that I come, obviously, and you're driving out into the countryside and you get onto Howell Hill and you're driving up. It's very steep, and then you turn up again. It's even steeper up the drive. First visit, I stalled the car about 4 times trying to get up the hill.
Remind me to drive when we go there then.
Yeah, no, I've nailed it now. It's fine.
Okay.
We had a new car and the engine's like pathetic. Anyway, so you get up there and you literally feel like you've just left the rest of the world behind and you're in this place. And I was saying to you just before, Natalie from Spooktacular, I said to her, oh, you should come and have a look because she lives nearby. I said, you'll love it. And she just fell in love with the place instantly. And she booked it. She arranged dates with Duncan then and there, and then put it on the website, and then she'd sold out in a week. And I'd wanted to go with her, and she'd sold out. So you just do fall in love with the place. It's relaxing, and it's you do just feel like you've just left the world behind, and that is such a welcoming thing sometimes to just go and completely switch off. And I mean, I've been there on investigations. I've been there with my partner Ricky on our own for like just a getaway weekend. We've been with the girls. They love it there. It's just great.
So what does the outside look like? Does it look a bit weird, or is it quite classic looking, or?
It looks a little bit disjointed because it's been added on over time. So you walk along the path on your way in, some lovely hedges and things around, and then you pass, there's an old coach house, which has been done up into a South Catering holiday cottage. And then you get to the corner of the building, and the path kind of tucks around to the right. So you're standing, when you first lay eyes on the house, you're seeing the Victorian part of the house, the Victorian extension, which is got some nice big bay window downstairs, and then it's got a big bay window in the room upstairs as well. And then you kind of come round the edge of the house then, and then you see the front of the house, and it's just wide. But then the main part of the house is pink, pale pink. Right. And then you've got a nice, really beautiful 1920s pillared kind of foyer porch bit built on. So it's got different parts to it. I suppose when you look at it with fresh eyes, you think it's quite not segregated, but yeah, it's a funny looking house to look at, which just adds to the quirkiness. I think it's a
multi-layered cake.
Oh yeah. Like when you go into the main, and you go through the like the 1920s add-on, and you go into the hallway, and that's one of the original parts of the house. And I remember saying one night to Duncan, so the stairs, which now run along the back wall, were somewhere else originally. And he was saying, yeah, they were. I think he was kind of describing. I'm like, I've got this wrong, but you'd go in, and then the stairs would come up and back towards the doorway. They didn't go away from you, they came towards you. So even trying to get your head around how it was originally before the add-ons and before it was all altered, it just adds to all the layers of history when you're trying to imagine, how it was. And it's good enough as it is now, but trying to picture how it was back in the day, it's just.
So how long has Duncan been there, do you know?
About 20.
Oh, he's not recent then. He's been there a while to get to know it, get to know the house's foibles.
Yeah,
I understand, because there's an awful lot of sort of pagan and witchcraft links in that part of the world, isn't there?
Oh yeah, and he's had a lot of guests of that nature. He's had naturists stay in. He's had people staying that go out into the woods and will camp up in the woods and do their thing up there, and yeah.
Because it's right in the middle of some woods, isn't it? Or it's bordered by some woods or something. reading in?
Well, yeah, like immediately around the house, there's woodland, surrounded by trees. You can a lot of the land that Duncan owns is in the trees, so you can go up for a good walk through the woods.
And what's this about wild boar?
Yeah, I didn't know that until we'd been staying a couple of times, and then Duncan said, "Oh, if you do hear noises when you're out there, it might just be the boar." And I said, "What?" Yeah, there's wild boar out there. And he also sees some quite beautiful stags as well sometimes, because he said that he used to have 2 dogs. Boo sadly passed away quite recently. But he said they'd go barking out there trying to scare them off. I said, God, I wish you'd told me that before we'd gone wandering through the woods at midnight or whatever.
Well, stags wouldn't bother me too much, but the boar might.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think I'll borrow his dog if I go walking in the woods. Does your dog want to walk? Yes, it does. Come with me. Yeah, wild boar, no thanks. I wouldn't want to go to totes with one of them.
I mean, I've never encountered anything, or I've never heard anything. We do hear odd noises when you're in the woods, but then you think if it was an animal, you'd hear them moving away. I don't think we've ever come across any large animal out there. In the odd noise, but then there's no follow-on noise to suggest it's something coming closer or walking away.
Yeah. So we're saying it's got. I mean, he's very embracing of the whole pagan Wiccan paranormal thing. It's at the house itself. I mean, if you Google it and look at photos, not so much the ones he's got on his website, but if you go on something like TripAdvisor, where people have put their own photos on, you can see it is different. It's not your run-of-the-mill B&B. I would say that some people who are a bit sort of conservative and stuff might find it not what they're looking for. I know when the hotel inspector went there, she didn't like it, did she?
No.
She was quite sort of derogatory about it, whereas other people who like things are a bit different rather than your standard travel lodge or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with travel lodge, but they want something that's got a bit of character. Absolutely love it, because there's something different to look at. The rooms aren't identikit. They're all a bit different.
Yeah.
All got their own names. Now, one of them is called the Dryad Suite.
Yes.
What the hell's a dryad?
So a dryad is like a nymph or a tree spirit. I think only female.
Yeah.
They could be male as well, I'm not sure, but I think they're female, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's logical if it's surrounded by woods and you've got the pagan link and everything else. And I think it's dryad is one of the ones that's got a 4-poster bed in it.
Oh, the bed is amazing.
Is it worth it?
Oh, God. Honestly, it's worth it just going for that bed if you stayed in that room. Although that room is the most infamously haunted.
Well, on that note, I mean,
so toss it between the bed and the ghosts. Like, do you want a night's sleep or do you want to just lie down in a comfy bed?
Honestly, when I'm tired, I could sleep anywhere. I don't care. As long as they're not trying to pull the duvet off me and make me cold, they can do what they want. Be having a blooming party in the room as long as they let me sleep. But you said in your article that what you put in your article was just touching on the surface of the supernatural delights. And I don't know which room. Were you talking about the Dryad room?
Yes.
Article, you were. Okay. Good, isn't it? It was like I planned it. But you were saying you were only touching on the supernatural delights that this room has to offer. Touch away. Touch further.
Oh, honestly. So you go into the suite because you've got the little cabin room as well. So you go through the cabin room, which is a smaller bedroom, and it's got a really cute little 4-poster bed. Mm-hmm. When we go and stay with the girls, we chuck them in that bed and we have the big bed. Although, by morning time, we're all in the same bed. And then you have the bathroom, and then you've got the dryad room, and you walk in, and the first thing you see is this 4-poster bed draped with red velvet tasseled with ostrich feathers. Feathers, the hairy bits off of a feather. Do you know what I mean? If you stripped a feather and you got all the hairy bits.
I don't know what they're called. I'm scared of birds, remember. I'm not going to know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're not the best person to ask about the terminology. Anyway, we'll call them the dangly bits.
The things that fly.
But this bed it's 7 foot. So the first time we stayed, my friend Carly, it was me, Carly, and my mum. And Carly came last minute. So we said, we'll squeeze in the bed together. It's fine, because all the rest of the rooms had been taken for the event. And honestly, the 3 of us slept in this bed and we didn't even touch. It's huge.
Oh, that sounds bliss.
Yeah, it's heaven. And then you've got a little area with a bit where the bay window is. There's a little table and chairs in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a wood burner in the bedroom. I mean, there's nothing nicer than falling asleep in this massive, and it's comfy as well. It's like sleeping in a cloud. And it's, you know, those duvets that are really heavy, so they probably tuck you in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a bed throw on top of that. Softest pillows. Draw the curtains. It's got wooden shutters as well, so you pull the shutters tight, pull the curtains, you can hear the wind howling and the fire's crackling, and it's just the best. So that's the Dryad Suite.
But what are the ghosts like?
Through good eyes. Okay, so through the spooky eyes, you've got, we went and we were told stories of a table sliding across the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that table move, but I'm not saying it didn't happen to those who, you know, who've seen it. Quite a few were in the room. And the other thing was the wardrobe doors open on their own. So, you know what you go in with your logical brain, right? The catch is going to be loosed. You're going to walk across the floor. The floorboard's going to clunk and it's going to shift the wardrobe and the door's going to come swinging open. We went in there. We were jumping on the floor. We were tugging at the door, and it's quite stiff to open.
Right.
And it was the end of the first visit we stayed, and we were in the bedroom. We packed all our bags and we were just saying our goodbyes. And my mum just got really upset and started, not sobbing, but she cried. And I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, no,
man up, Mum, man up.
Yeah, but it's not like her. And she just became very emotional. And then the wardrobe door just swung open. We were like, what? We'd been trying to get it to open by itself all weekend. It didn't. And then it just as we were leaving, just swung open.
And this was not previewed, that's the wrong word, but you know, so this was just after your mum had suddenly
got... Yeah, within like the same...
I presume wasn't like her. It's not her normal...
No.
Yeah.
No. So that was all very odd. And then, I mean, I can't even count how many times I've been back since then, and it's never happened since. But one morning, I tend to go with my mum. She enjoys her ghosts and stuff, so she comes along. And she said about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, she had this massive thump, and it woke her up. And then she heard it again, and it was coming from inside the wardrobe. And the wardrobe sits against an outside wall, so it's not even as if there's a room behind it that's someone's making a banging, you know. It's just bizarre.
Is the wardrobe an antique?
It's old, yeah.
So it might not even be to do with the house.
No, possibly not. Footsteps is very common in there. Hearing people walking around in the middle of the night or in the afternoon, in the daytime, just hearing people walking around. Things on EVP, people have seen things. I think some friends, I've not seen the video, but I'm sure somebody else told me, another friend, we've all been there, said, oh, you should see so-and-so's video. She filmed the bed and has got this figure that kind of grows up out of the duvet, this black little shape, and is like on the end of the bed. Now, my partner Ricky doesn't know all this because he's kind of interested, but we wouldn't know all the ins and outs of everything. And we stayed, I think it was the first time we ever went on our own. I can't remember. Anyway, he said he woke up and he seen something walking across on the bed. Mm-hmm. And he scooched, tried to find me because I was probably right down the other end of this massive bed. He scooched over closer to me and just tried to get back off to sleep. And he told me about that in the morning. And I said, that's so strange because that's something else that someone's experienced. He puts it down to being asleep. And I said, yeah, but you were awake enough to be a little bit freaked out and move across to get comfort from me. So you must have seen something. We were staying another time with some friends. Coincidentally, they booked it because they'd heard about it through me. And when we got there, they were there. And they said, oh, hi, did all that. On the Saturday morning, they'd gone into Ross on Wye because they'd had to get her husband's glasses repaired. He'd left them on the windowsill. And when they woke up in the morning, they were all twisted and bent.
Interesting.
Yeah, the kettle will go on its own. You hear the glasses. Duncan, there's like a nice old Victorian washstand in there. So you've got the kettle on there, a bottle of water, 2 glasses, and then your tea and your coffee pots and things. The glasses clink together. Mm-hmm. And it's not the kind of room where if someone shut a door somewhere in the house, it'd be a bit of a vibration. It's big and it's solid.
There's no way that the floorboards go through to another room, that someone walking on another floorboard could cause it to move in that room?
No, because with the Dryad, you've got, where the wardrobe is, it's not an outside wall. It backs onto the bathroom, but there wouldn't be anybody else in there because every room's got its own bathroom.
Right.
But otherwise, it's got 3 outside walls.
Right.
So that's the Victorian extended bit, so it kind of sticks out on its own.
Right.
I woke up one night when I was staying there. You know when something just wakes you up in the middle of the night and you don't know what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Woke up and then I heard this, like, I could only describe it as either a male, like, kind of noise, or the dog's barking. So I told myself it was the dog's barking to try and get myself back off to sleep. Mm-hmm. And I spoke to friends the next day and I said, I was waking up and I heard this really creepy noise, and I thought maybe it was the dogs. And he said no, because Duncan takes the dogs up to bed and they're like over the other side of the house. Like I say, the Victorian bit sticks out and it's kind of on its own, so you've only got attic above you. So even if the dogs it wasn't even a bark, it was just like a grumbly growl. Even if it had been the dogs, I wouldn't have heard them from where we were. So
could have been a boar.
It was in the room, though.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, I'm 100% sure it was in the room, but my brain was like, yeah, it's just a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been a boar. I would have said it was in the room. It was loud enough to, yeah.
Okay, so that's the Dryad. That's the Dryad. Yeah. And another one that gets mentioned a lot is it's called Old Mrs. Thomas's room.
Yes.
Now, I did find a Thomas who lived there. She's on the 1939 register as living there, Elizabeth Thomas, who was born in September 1882. But she certainly isn't a Mrs., because according to that, she's single and not widowed or divorced, but single, because they would note on these things whether someone had ever been married or not.
Yeah.
So she wasn't a Mrs. Thomas. But the other person living there with her, and it was just 2 of them, was a lady by the name of Sarah Lewis, who was 3 years older than Ms. Thomas. Now, I know in the write-up of Old Mrs. Thomas's room, I think it's been put that this was the room favoured by Mrs. Thomas, who used to live here. So I'm presuming it's the same one. And I'm wondering if she called herself Mrs. Thomas for, I don't know, society acceptability or
maybe
something. But you've mentioned... I think you mentioned to me the name Elizabeth. Tell me about Elizabeth.
So Elizabeth, from what we know, obviously we're coming at it from an investigation angle as opposed to solid research, but Elizabeth is a name that comes up time and time again. I've always imagined her to be more Victorian, but then I could be wrong.
But she was born in this Elizabeth would have been born in Victorian slang. She was born in 1882, so she'd have been 1919 when Queen Victoria died.
Yeah, so maybe that fits. But she is one of the more dominant spirits of the house, and people often comment on having a kind of an attachment to her, and it's to those who aren't spiritually minded, which I guess if people are listening to this, then they are. I think my mum had quite an attachment to this Elizabeth, because my mum absolutely loves the Dryad suite, and I have got an absolute love-hate relationship with it, because it scared me to death at times, whereas my mum she'll hear all these noises and she'll just go back to sleep, and she loves the room. And I think when you're investigating, it's great to hear these noises, but when you're trying to sleep and you're most vulnerable, it can be quite scary. So I'm lying there frozen in bed with my eyes like saucers, and Mum's snoring next to me. And I said to her the next day, I said, did you not hear that noise? It was this constant banging was coming from the chest of drawers one night. And I just thought, maybe it's the shutters, maybe it's the wind. It's not coming from there, but yeah, I'm 100% sure it was coming from this little chest of drawers. My mum said, oh yeah, I heard that, but I don't know. I just kind of ignored it. And I was like, how can you? So I think she had a kind of a little bit of I don't know, an effect from this Elizabeth. But Elizabeth tends to be, despite Mrs. Thomas's bedroom, Elizabeth tends to be in the dryad.
Right.
And a funny story, when we were staying that first time with my friend Carly, she was a bit of a wimp, and she wouldn't ever be left anywhere on her own. Excuse me. So she decided she was going to wash her hair on the Saturday morning, but she wasn't going to have a bath, only because the bathroom in the dryad is, you sit in the bath and you have the little shower head over you. It's not a stand-up shower, so it's a bit of a faff. So she said, I'm just going to wash my hair over the side of the bath. And growing up, I've known Carly for years. She's a natural brunette. So she's like got the bathroom door open just in case she needs to scream for help. You know, she's imagining all the worst things. And she's washing her hair and she ran out of shampoo. So she shouted me, and I got mine because it was out of reach, and I squeezed some into her hand for her. But all the shampoo that she'd lathered up already had a kind of a pink colour to it. You know, if you've dyed your hair that kind of mahogany kind of colour, you imagine the bubbles that would come out if you hadn't rinsed it properly. So that was the kind of bubbles. And I noticed this, but I didn't comment on it because I didn't think to. And then I went back into the bedroom, and we were with my mum, and we were just waiting for her to finish. And she come in, scared to death, and she said, I was rinsing the bubbles out of my hair and they were pink. And I said, yeah, I noticed that. But then it dawned on me, she'd been blonde for quite a while, but in my head, you know, she natural brunette, I just kind of imagined her. I didn't even imagine it, if you know what I mean. It just didn't register with me to be concerned about it. But she said, yeah, she was rinsing these bubbles out of her hair and they rinsed out pink. Now, from other people who have investigated the house, they say Elizabeth had long, curly red hair, which I thought was, maybe I'm just putting two and two together, but there was no reason these bubbles should be pink. The shampoo wasn't pink. And yet that happened in the area where this spirit's meant to be. I sound like a bit of a crazy girl, don't I, telling this story? No,
I'm keep following the train of thought. I'm listening.
Yeah. But I just wondered if it was her trying to kind of make herself known in a really bizarre way, but...
Don't know. I mean, did you say that Carly was blonde at that point? Or
yeah, completely blonde.
Why you?
When I looked at it, I was like, oh, of course. But when I seen the bubbles, I just thought, oh, she must have put a colour on her hair.
Did you use purple shampoo to stop the blonde going brassy?
No. And it was pink. It was red. It was a reddy pink, like more of a mahogany. If you whitened down a mahogany kind of colour.
Possibly. Who knows? I mean, I say I've only found I did do my normal ridiculous amount of digging, like I do for every show, and I tried to find as many census type records as I could for the house.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not on a street, which is the easiest way to search when you've not got names, it did take quite a while. But then when I cottoned on to the address links and the registration or the registered site that they use, or the registered area, which is Ross r/d, and it tended to come up as being on Hom Green. That was the easiest way to search for it. I did start finding it, and I found, how many census records did I find? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I found 7, so I was missing a few. But I didn't. The only Sarah, because that was another name that you'd mentioned to me. The only Sarah I found was the one that was living with Elizabeth Thomas in 1939. And we say old Elizabeth. Well, 1839. She was only 57 at that point. No, it's 50. Yeah, 18 plus 39 is 57, isn't it? Yeah, 57. Oh, God, it's hurting. The only other Elizabeth I could find was there on the register in 1841, and she was one of the servants, and she was Elizabeth Smith, and she was when a John and Mary Jenkins were there. But what was interesting with all the census records is the lack of children. No, there didn't seem to be any that had young children.
Right.
Which I thought was very strange for a house of that grandeur. And so it's not quite as big. I mean, there is a manor house nearby, I think, called Hill Court or something, like Hill Court Manor, I think it's called.
Right.
But this one would have still been a good size house
Yeah.
For the 17 and 1800s. And I say for the 1800s, none of the census records, and I know a census record only captures a snapshot in time on a 10-year period, but the other thing I noticed was whoever was living there every 10 years, it changed a lot, which makes me think they didn't own it, these people who were living there. It was either sort of somebody rich owned it and said, oh, as a favour, you can stay here, or they were renting. So I would be really interested to find out who owned it, because I think that will answer quite a lot of questions. But I thought it was strange that, say, with nearly all of them, I couldn't find any that had what I would call a family unit. It was all either...
Yeah, I've seen one of the... I've seen a couple, but one of the only full-bodied apparitions I've ever seen was at Hill House, and it was of a child.
Mm.
So they're children there.
Yeah, say nothing on any of the census records that there was any children. Now, obviously, there could have been a child there, and they could have died in the 10-year interim. I don't know, but it was just something that I observed for what I would call a large family house.
Yeah, that is strange.
It always seemed to be couples or a single woman, basically. In 1861, it looked like somebody called Mary Ann Bond, who was, I think she was single, widowed, born in 1805. She was living there, and it said, because the census asks how they're funding it, and it their independent means, but I'm pretty sure she came from a farming background, which wouldn't have been unusual. She also had 3 servants as well, so she must have had reasonable means to afford a house like that and 3 servants.
Yeah.
But the one that I found the most intriguing was on the 1871 census. There was somebody by the name of, it said William Gust Brown, and he was 62, and his wife Maria was 39. And what was interesting is they show you the person's place of birth, and his place of birth was Jamaica, British Jamaica, and hers was Jersey, Channel Islands. And I thought, well, that's quite unusual for 1871. Plus, she was 23 years younger than him. And so I looked him up. And if it is the guy I found, and there can't be too many of them, born that date, died the date he died, and I validated all of this.
Yeah.
It was actually a guy by the name of William Gustavus Brown, who was actually quite a famous military guy, and actually was the British troop commander of China and Hong Kong from 1863 to 1864, and he was mixed race.
God.
His mum, supposedly, according to the write-up, was a freed slave.
Wow.
Supposedly. But you can get photos of him. In fact, I'll put some up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
He was mixed race. Which I found quite fascinating for that time, for somebody who was mixed race to be a senior officer.
Yeah, to have such a position. Yeah,
and he was a senior officer in the British Army. He only had, well, on the census there, obviously his wife was living with him, who, as I say, was just work this out again, 24 years younger than him. He also had his niece, somebody by the name of Martha Clundell, living there, and he had a servant, Daniel Whittingham, who was local to the area. I found him out. I think he went to live with him when he got widowed himself.
Okay.
But what was interesting is I couldn't find any trace of this Martha Clundell afterwards, because I found out that William was actually half German. And so Clundell, I'm presuming, German name, she might have gone back to Germany or something. So it was quite sort of, you know, there are definitely links to other elements of history, which for such a, you know, that without sounding disrespectful, houses like that, not necessarily the activity and everything, aren't uncommon in the UK. House that size with an old coach house, and I've seen loads. But to find one and then to find it's got quite interesting links as well.
It doesn't surprise me, to be honest. That's who I was.
Oh, okay.
Full of surprises.
Okay. Well, it intrigues. I'd love to know what he was doing there, because he wasn't from the area. Neither was his wife. And he died in, where was it? I did write it down. Where have I written it down? Well, anyway, he died when he died. He was living in sort of Surrey, Kent way.
Right.
And he was registered. I think it was 1883. Something like 1883. He died, and on the 1881 census, he was living down in sort of Kent, Surrey borders. So he obviously travelled around a lot.
Yeah. Did you figure out how long he'd spent at Hill House?
No, I couldn't figure that out. Not with the. He wasn't there for the 1881. He wasn't there in 1881. So, and he'd only come back from China and Hong Kong in sort of 65. So, and I can't make out what it says his occupation was on the census. It's something to do with something list. So I'm wondering if it's something to do with the reserves list or.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he didn't officially retire until a few years after that, but it's still interesting to wonder what things he brought in to the house. You know, what kind of, I mean, he would have seen fighting. He would have seen, battles, and he would have had, I would presume, not blood on his hands, but he would have had soldiers under his command who died.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, and the fact that he had a wife who was 23 years younger than him.
Must have been a looker.
I'll send you the picture. I'll send you a picture of him.
Is that a no?
Well, I don't know. He's very austere looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did more digging, and I actually found him living in Jersey when she would have been about 8-9 years old. So I'm wondering if they met when he was posted there or something. I don't know. But it's still very interesting when you start digging into these people and looking at what their life stories were, and wanting to know why they lived there.
Yeah.
The other room I wanted to mention is the White Lady room.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the White Lady room, apart from the fact that apparently it has 3 fake Delft tiles for people to spot. I read that on the website. That would be a challenge for my husband, because he loves doing stuff like that. But
yeah,
tell me about the room. What goes on there?
So the White Lady room is a funny one. It's one that I always find myself, this is, if I can say this right, when it comes to the end of a weekend there, I always think, an investigation weekend, I mean, not a chill out weekend. I always think, God, I've hardly been in there. It's a room that I kind of skip past all the time. I go in it, but I never really spend much time in there. The door to go into that room isn't the original door into the room, because the White Lady would have been part of the original 1600s part of the building. So where the stairs were, which I believe were kind of from, it's like a bit of a little boiler room now, which you pass by on the way into the Victorian part. That's where the original stairs would have been, and I think that's where the original doorway into the room would have been there, which is where the bathroom is now, the little ensuite. People often pick up on, that's why I was asking about Sarah, pick up on the spirit of a Sarah in there, who seems to take a dislike to males for good reason, if stories are to be are true. Apparently she fell in love with someone higher than herself, had a bit of an affair, fell pregnant. When this was discovered, she was done away with in a not very nice way. So you can kind of see why she'd be against males being, if that's her space, being in there. An interesting story. Next to the White Lady, you can have the 2 rooms together, or you can have them separately. You go into the Dragon room. So there's a door from the White Lady into the Dragon room, which is purely called that because it's got a dragon painted on the wall.
Right.
So 2 of my friends were staying, and they were sleeping, one in each room. And they said that during the night, both of the rooms were shaken. And these are lads who, they like all this stuff, but they're not fantasists, and they're not those that would run screaming. They've seen some pretty scary things, and they've stayed sat down where they were and faced it out.
They're not prone to hysteria sort of thing.
No, not at all. And they both said, God, it was like the whole room was shaking. And I think it got to one point where one or the other actually thought, I'm not going to get any sleep in here. So they left and they went into another room where some other people were staying. There's extra beds. And it was only in the morning that they were both discussing having experienced this and how strange it was. And then we were leaving to go home, and we were coming down the stairs, and it was when my friend Carly was there, and she said, "You seeing what I'm seeing?" And I looked, because I wasn't really paying attention. I looked at the bottom of the stairs. There was literally half the ceiling had come down. There was plaster everywhere. All over the chair. And Duncan was like, "Look at what you blooming ghost," and this is typical Duncan sense of humour. "Look at what you blooming ghostons have done now." He said there's no damp. There's no reason that half of his ceiling should have just crumbled down. So that's just another bizarre Hill House story, but that kind of focused around the White Lady room, I think.
So did he ever find out what had caused? Was there a problem that caused it to crumble, or was it just inexplicable?
No, inexplicable. He said the last time he had a bit of the ceiling come away, because it's, like I say, it's an old house. It had been damp. He said it's bone dry. There's absolutely no, and it was, I'd say maybe about 3 meters squared kind of area of plaster that had come down. It was a good substantial bit of the ceiling.
Because, I mean, you know, your other half is in the construction trade, same as mine.
Yeah.
I use mine's experience on these kind of things quite a lot. I'll tell him these sort of things and say, what could cause it?
Yeah.
Do you ever use your other half for that kind of input? Because I'm not an expert on construction. I mean, you know, I know about history and everything else, but when it comes to looking at, I mean, it's Wayne, my other half, who said about the floorboards. If they're connecting floorboards into another room, if someone stands on them in one room, it could cause the one in the other room to flex because of the way the boards work. But, you know, I just wondered if there's you ever mention this sort of stuff to other people who maybe have that expertise to see what they think.
Yeah, no, to be honest, with the ceiling at Hill House, I haven't ever kind of asked anybody what they thought could have caused it. I mean, maybe I should do. It'd be good to see what people's opinions on it are. But Duncan's very level-headed. I'd say he verges on the sceptical side. He's well aware of why people come to his house to investigate, and he's more than welcoming, you know, he's more than happy to welcome people in. But if you ask him stories, no, it's all ridiculous. But then he'll tell you his experiences. So, like the parquet flooring that runs through the downstairs, it tinkles as you walk over it, all the tiles are loose, which is just part of the charm.
Yeah.
He often hears that when he's on his own in the house. And when you go in the bar's a beautiful room. It's got a nice Chesterfield couch and the open fire. You could just spend the whole evening in there. He's put corks all over the ceiling, just because he has. And he said he was in there one day doing that, finishing off the ceiling, and he heard a whole group of people come in. He thought maybe like it was like a hen party, or, you know, like someone's plans had failed and they thought, well, we'll stop in here and see if we can stay here. And he kind of rolled his arm, got down off his ladder and went through. There was nobody in the house. But he said he could hear a whole load of laughing and talking and chatting, and he just was imagining the worst, like putting up with all these people all at once. And yet there was nobody there. So he doesn't play up to these stories. He'll tell you if you ask him, but otherwise he's he's quite sceptical. But for that to happen, he wouldn't make anything of it if it had been something natural. He would have just been like, oh, for God's sake, you know, we've had a leak or whatever. Because recently they had a leak. And there are a lot of, I think it might have actually been in the White Lady bathroom. They'd had a leak on the 3rd floor, which is their private quarters. Right. So some of that had come down, I think, and he was like, oh, damn, we had a leak. So he's not going to play up to the stories to try and embellish it if it is just something that was natural, do you know? And he was a bit dumbfounded by that, so...
Yeah, that's why I do like taking my husband on these kind of things, because he's very good at spotting stuff like that, being a builder by trade, and a roofer as well. So he's quite good at giving possible scenarios. And then when if you've managed to look at 10 or 12 different scenarios and written every single one of them off, as I think I was saying on the show that you were interviewing me with with Jane on Paranormal Voice last night. If you can go through, a load of things, logical explanations, and you still can't find one that fits, it's paranormal. And as I said last night, and I hammer this home as much as I can, paranormal doesn't have to mean ghost. It just means not normal. Can't be explained, not normal. That's interesting. So, I mean, you mentioned they used to have 2 dogs and they sadly lost one.
Yeah.
Dogs are great at sensing things that we may not pick up on. Do you know if the dog or the dogs have ever had a part of the building that freaks them out or they don't want to go near, or?
Not that I know of. They're very, very chilled out. Like I said to you, when you pull up in the driveway, they'll come charging at you. Well, both of them used to, now it's just George, but they'll come charging at you, growling and barking, and you'd be half tempted to jump back in the car and lock the doors. But as soon as they get to you and you say, hello, silly, the tails and bums are wagging like mad. They're real softies, really. So they just kind of lollop around, very, very chilled out. But Duncan does, I remember one particular occasion he said that he takes them up, well, not only George now, but he used to take them both up to bed with him at night time, up to the upstairs. And he said they were barking and barking and barking down the stairs, and he obviously came down, make sure no one had broken in or anything. Nobody was around. So I do think that they pick up on things.
But it'd be interesting to ask him more about that, because animals, dogs, are so good at detecting stuff that we're not, because their vision's different to ours, and obviously their hearing is different, their smell is stronger. They're very, very good at seeing and sensing things that we're not picking up on.
I just wondered, the fact that they've lived there since they were puppies, and the house, in my mind, is so active in, like you were saying, very subtle ways sometimes. Sometimes it's off the scale, like ceilings falling down and things, but sometimes it's just the doorknob rattles, or you hear footsteps, or it's, maybe they've just become so used to it that they don't really react as much as if they've been brought in, to a fresh situation.
Possibly. But, the house itself, obviously it is a B&B, and we've said about the ceiling, but don't worry, it is safe to stay at. I thought I'd better say that in case Duncan listens to this and go, oh my God, you've just ruined all my business.
Thanks, Lorien.
Not my fault, Duncan, blame Lorien. But the fact is that, it is safe to stay at and everything else, but as we said, it wouldn't be the place for everyone, because it is different and unusual, and I think different and unusual is good, but not everyone does. Is there any part of it that you've had access to? So obviously this wouldn't include the private quarters. Is there any part of it that just feels like you're not wanted here? Do you get what I mean? Like you're intruding?
Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, there is. So downstairs, funnily enough, it's the room below the Dryad. So it's the Victorian part again, and I'm always drawn to it. So if we're on an investigation, and it's when we used to investigate it, we were a group of friends, so it wasn't so much of a structured event. It was what should we do? Where do we want to go? Where should we try first? I was always drawn, and we call it the conference room. And now Duncan's the downstairs bedroom. You walk through one bedroom and then into the conference room. So the bedroom used to be where Duncan's mum stayed. She sadly passed away since, but that was her bedroom. And then off that was the conference room. So it wasn't ever done up for guests. So we always had access to that room to use as we pleased. So if we were doing a bit of a workshop, that would be the place we'd all gather on a Saturday afternoon to do that. When it comes to nighttime, that's the place I always want to go, because it's the place where we always get something happen, and I'm always left on the edge of my seat. I wouldn't say so much that you feel like you don't belong there. I don't think there's anywhere in the house that kind of really makes you feel like that, but it's a different energy in there, and it makes me feel a lot more tense and on edge and ready. When you're just ready and waiting for something to happen, that's that room. So it's got that kind of vibe to it. Although I don't feel like I need to leave, it's if there was going to be a place in the house that I said was scary, apart from obviously the Dryad, it would be the room below, the conference room.
Okay. So do we know what it was used for in its day? You're saying it was Duncan's mum's bedroom for quite a long time. Do we know what it was used for 100 years ago?
No, I don't know, to be honest. Because we've always just kind of given it our own label. I don't, because downstairs opposite that, so if you walk into the hallway, into the entrance hall, that room, the two rooms go off to the right, and then on the left was Duncan's private downstairs rooms. You had the TV in there. So if he had guests and he was cooking, that was his place to go and sit and have peace. Mm-hmm. Where I didn't know until quite recently that was an original ballroom. That's maybe more so in the Victorian times, they would have used that as a ballroom.
Almost pre-Victorian, I would have thought.
Yeah, maybe. But then, I don't know the other.
I'm just wondering what would change that much at night. It would have to be something that. Yeah,
I'm guessing it would be a social room, because if you think about obviously you haven't been, but the layout of the house, you've got what was Duncan's private living room, which is a big long room.
Yeah.
And then you've got these two rooms, and then you've got a bar, and then the kitchen, and then the dining room. So I guess it must have just been, if the other room was more of a ballroom and more of a formal room, maybe this was more of the day room, the relaxing, like the living rooms, maybe.
Smoking room, library, something like that. That would be interesting to know. I don't know if Duncan would know that, but that would, Interesting. Well, I think it's one of those places. When you do want to do a girly few days, let me know.
We definitely will, whenever we can.
Sure, I can come via Northampton and we can share the drive, because there's quite a trek for me from here to Ross-on-Wye. But the other thing I found out about Ross-on-Wye itself was it's got a couple of buildings that are quite close to stuff I am working on at the moment. It's got an old British school, which is obviously the current book I'm writing is on the British School Museum in Hitchin. It's got an old British school. It's on Y Street, and it had a workhouse as well, which there's not much of it left, like with so many of them, on Alton Street. And I'm such a nerd that when I find things like that fit into other stuff I'm working on, I get all excited, because it's fab making links like that. But
more reason for a road trip as well.
I think so. Let the boys look after the kids, and we can let loose.
Definitely.
For a while. Well, thank you ever so much for stepping in to do this show.
No problem. It's been fun.
I really appreciate it. I know you've got a lot going on for next year, so I'm sure. Pardon?
Fingers crossed that it goes on.
Well,
I've got plans.
Tell me about it. But so hopefully you can keep us posted on Haunted Histories, what you're up to and how people can contribute and what they can do and everything else to keep up with Ghost Book and the other website you're building. Is there any last words that you want to have?
Probably just go and book a stay at Hill House. I mean, the way I've described it as being so quirky and all the rest of it, it's a beautiful place. The ceiling doesn't always fall down on you. It only happened that once, and it's fixed now. But I'd say, like, if I was going to weigh up the percentages, I'd say maybe 15% of people don't like it. And the rest, the 85%, just fall in love with the place. There's books to read. There's a cinema you can go and sit in. Duncan's food is to die for. And you go in the bar, and if he pours you a rum, you can't walk out the bar. He's generous, and he's so heartfelt and sincere. And it's his sarcasm, I think, which puts some people off who just don't get him. But he's a lovely, lovely guy, and he runs the best place. And you should just go and book yourself. If you want to get away from it all and just chill out, there's no other place to go then.
And he does vegetarian food as well, doesn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he buys in all like local ales, and I got this cider from up the road, you've got to try this. And it's just all the local cheeses. You have dinner, and then he brings out the massive cheese board, and he's telling you this is a Pearl Wen, this is from up the road, and this is a Pearl Lass. And it's just, he's so heartfelt with it all, and you'll just have an amazing time. So just go.
Well, I tell you what, you've got sarcasm, you've got a lot of food for your money, quirkiness, and a big dog to cuddle.
And all the ghosts.
What more do you want?
Exactly.
Even if you don't see a ghost, those 4 things for a good weekend away.
Yeah. 100%. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much, Lauren, to talking. Actually, this is the first show I've done since I won the award. So,
oh, congratulations from me.
Yeah, you're the first person to be interviewed by me.
An award-winning host. Wow, I'm honoured.
I will stop talking about it eventually, but
Oh, don't. Carry on.
I'll probably ramp it up again when I actually receive the award from Steve. So I'll put all the photos on going cheesy grins holding my award.
Selfies, yeah.
Silver's a better colour on me anyway than gold. Well, thank you. Do keep us posted what you've been up to. One more show now until the end of 2020, and you'll find out who my last show is with when I introduce it. I'll mention it. It'll be on the website who it's going to be with next week. You'll have to just wait and see. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a real good one. Not that all my guests aren't good. That's why I pick them. I do it for you guys. I pick the best people and the most interesting people because, well, that's what I do. That's what I do here on Haunted Histories. So you've been listening to Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio, in case you didn't realise. Thank you ever so much for your time. Don't forget, check out all the other shows, check out the webpage, check out the Facebook page, read the blogs, read things that other people share to the page. Just join in. We're a friendly bunch. But on that note, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.